Hey guys, today we are going to assemble the business card Arduino kit from Cyber City Circuits. So we've got our main bag of the kit parts itself. On this one we also get extra breadboard kit and some hookup wires so that we can make some external projects if we want to. So set those to the side. And then we get our quantity card, make sure everything is in these bags, what the board looks like. The instructions are here on the card itself, so we can go there and check out written instructions, but you guys found the video, so come on board. So open up our bag here, just dump everything out. We've got a few things here. Set this guy to the side. So we've got a USB cable. We have an FTDI adapter so we can program it. This basically makes this board like an Arduino Nano or an Uno. We've got all the I/O broken out here on one side. We've got a DIP package at Vega 328P. The FTDI header will go in here. We have a couple of LEDs, one for power, one for like pin 13, the blinky. We have a push button reset switch, and then we've just got some resistors, an inductor, and a couple of caps to put on it. So all in all, fairly simple board. And we've got our parts here. So we have our blue LED, our red LED, our header for our I/O, our IC, and a socket. We have the inductor here, 3.1 microfarad caps, our reset switch, 3 1K resistors, and then a right angle header for the FTDI adapter. So just like any other kit, I always like starting with the lowest components to the board first, which on this will be our resistors. So what I'm going to do is take our paper off, and I like to take them and just bend them kind of around my finger, if that makes any sense. You can do all three at one time. And then what we should be able to do is get right to it. Jump these right into the 1K or the 1000 ohm resistor spots. So I'm going to do all three at one time. My finger was a little bit too wide, so I am just adjusting to drop these guys in. Alright. These are 3 1Ks, and then on the back side, what I like to do is just bend these outward just a little bit to help hold them in position. That way, when you're trying to solder, kind of hold them there for you. And let's get to it. So I got my solder. Remember your safety. Soldering irons are hot, so be careful. I've got a right out of view here, I've got the filtration system that's going to pull any of my solder smoke away. Cleaning my iron now. And then what you want to do is just apply heat to the pin and the pad at the same time while feeding in your solder. And you want to get a nice, clean, even joint. So on some of these, you've got your ground pad that's going to be a little bit harder to heat up with the iron. So you don't want to put too much heat on it. But you want to make sure that you get a good flow, just to get a nice fillet. Right onto the pads. See, we got nice fillets on there. The pads are totally covered up. So what I'll do is just pull these guys back straight. Take my nippers. Just clip these guys right off. Alright, so our 3 resistors are in. It's fairly quick. We can do our inductor next. So again, same thing. We'll just take it, just bend it 90 degrees on the legs, and it'll go right into the inductor spot right next to the resistors. Now these resistors, the inductor, and even the capacitors on this board don't matter the orientation, but the LEDs will. So we have to make sure that we put those in the right direction. So same unit on this, we're just going to heat up, get good flow, and then clip them. Alright, next we can do our 3 caps. So I'll probably do these 2 together first, and then do that one by itself. So let's see. Put these 2 guys in place. Flip it over. Let the board kind of just hold those guys there. Now this is where we're into the ground plane a little bit, so you may have to put a little bit more heat on the top section of the board up here against the reset button. But you don't want to hold the heat on too long. So I like to maybe count to 5 in my head so that I know I got enough heat onto that ground plane, just so it soaks the solder into it. Clip these guys. And be careful clipping these, because these will shoot off across the room if you're not careful. Alright, so those guys are all in there very nice. We'll do the other cap. Again, the board can kind of support itself there. And we'll heat up the top plane. It's going to take just a little bit longer to heat up and get the solder on there. Now you'll notice too that sometimes I'll take the soldering iron and I'll kind of wipe it up the pin. And what that does is it creates a nice kind of even fillet going all the way up the pin itself. Clip these guys off. Alright, so again, what we were talking about is with the orientation of the LEDs is very important, very crucial. Now in our written instructions, we'll probably say put the power LED as the red one, and then the blue one as your blinky light, but you can choose whichever way you want to do it. And you'll notice on the silk screen we've got the positive pin is marked a little bit longer. On the right hand side is a little bit longer of a leg than the bottom leg. And you'll notice the silk screen also has a flat on one side, and so do the LEDs. So what we'll do is we'll just line it up so that the longer leg goes in the top towards the edge of the board. We'll slide that guy down in. And the same, just like the resistors, I'll just open them up a little bit. We'll do the blue at the same time. Alright. We'll put some heat on them. Again, I think the top of the board on this is the ground plane, so you may take a little bit more heat than what you think is necessary. And the bottom is going to be running to the current limiting resistor. So the resistor in line makes sure that the LED does not get overpowered and does not burn out. And it also affects the brightness of the LED by how much current is allowed to go to it. So there we go, the 2 LEDs are done. Clip these guys off. We'll go ahead and do the reset button next. And on this one you may have to hold it because it may try to fall out. So sometimes I like to just hold it with one hand and kind of put my solder in such a way, kind of hook it up so that I can get my iron in here just to get enough on it to hold it, because then I can put it down, hit all the other pins, and then come back and do this pin. Alright, so now I've got that one pin soldered. I can set the whole board down, go in here and hit these other pins. And these bottom ones are definitely into the ground plane, so they're going to take more heat. And I'll go back and hit that first one again, now that we have the other pins ready to go. And our button is now in place. So I think next, I want to go with the right angle header. So it's going to go outwards towards the end of the board. That way the FTDI adapter can plug right in here. You see it's all flush with the edge of the board real nice. And again, you might have to hold it with a finger. Loop some solder up. And just run down and grab maybe one or two pins just to help pin it in place. That way you can set it back down. And I'll do one down here. Now if you get solder bridges, it's alright, because you can always clean it back up. You may have to get some desoldering wick to actually go in and pull it off. So this has got a little bit of flex in it that will actually go in and kind of suck it off. You see it just comes right off my soldering iron right there. You can see that on the camera. So I may have a slight bridge down here, but what I'm going to do first is just try to continue soldering everything together. And I might be able to clean it off just with the iron itself without needing to use any of the desoldering braid. Yep, the bridge came right up. So I got no bridges in there. Scrape some of the flux away. They look pretty good. This ground pin is a little sharper than I like. I don't know if you can see it there. It sticks up a little high, so I'm just going to take, all that is extra solder. I'm just going to try to pull it away from the pin, so that as we're holding it, it just doesn't poke us in the fingers. Alright. Next I'll do the socket. So you'll notice here on the board, there's a notch on the silkscreen here, and there's also a notch on the socket right here. So I want to make sure that I match the notches. And then when we plug the IC in a little while, there's also a notch on the socket, on the IC itself. So I will hold this guy. And just go down through. I like to put one on one corner, get one on the other corner. That'll hold both of my sides. Feels pretty good. It feels good and tight. I'm all the way down as close to the board as I can get. I'll just run through and solder all these guys. And you want to make sure you're holding your soldering iron at such an angle that you're touching the PCB and the pin of the component at the same time. And it just takes a feel. That's why we do practice like this. It just takes a little bit of time to get used to the right technique to hold it. And I say practice makes perfect. And then you can get faster and faster as you're going. These small I/O lines here soldered very quickly because the trace is so small. You're not heating up very much, like the ground plane or like a power plane. . little bit of extra solder on a couple of these. Looks like it's really sucked the copper or the solder in all the way onto that header. The last thing we will do is put our 2x14 in. And again, you might just want to hold it. Do a little solder trick here. Hit a couple of the I/O pins because they have the small traces, and that'll kind of mechanically hold it in place. Alright, and again we're all the way down flush to the board, and we're pretty straight. So when you only do 1 or 2 pins, you can actually kind of wiggle it still. If you heat up one of the pins, you can kind of wiggle it and make sure that you're all the way down and flat. So now I'll run through these pins here. These 2 on the end are the ground plane, so they're going to take more heat. So that's our grounds. And then we'll just run through and do all the IOs really quick. That one did not stick at all. There we go. Side's pretty good. I'll flip it over and we'll come down the other side. I think that pretty much is going to conclude all the soldering that we have to do. Hit the ground plane one more time. So I'll just do a quick visual over the entire board. Make sure it all looks pretty good. No cold solder joints. And let's take the IC last. Just be very careful with this guy. You may have to pinch the pins in just ever so slightly to get into the socket. Take this guy, make sure it kind of fits in there nicely. Don't force it, just make sure all the pins are lined up. So I'm going to squeeze just a little bit more. Make sure all the pins are lined up before you press and seat it all the way in. So all my pins look good on this side. All my pins are going in on this side. So I'm going to just press it right in there. And we should be good to go. Now I'll take my FTDI adapter. I believe I've already got a USB cable here on this computer. Maybe I don't. So I'll take my USB cable, open this guy up as well. So USB is there. What I'll do is the FTDI just plugs in here on the end. And if you notice on the FTDI, you have DTR pins. If you flip it over, it's you have ground on this side, your DTR pin is on this side, so it will match exactly when you plug it directly in. So plug this guy in just like this, and then I will plug my USB in on this side. So I have power, and we have preloaded the blink sketch on, which is working right there, so that works perfect. Now what we can do is I can unpack my breadboard. We've got some other LEDs and switches, some 1K resistors are included, and then we've got jumper wire, so we can actually use some of these to jump from our I/O here, and then you can build out other things. You can load the Arduino software, and you can program this
as an LilyPad Arduino in the board settings.
And you should be good to go. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and checking out our kits, and we look forward to doing whatever we can in the future. Thank you guys so much. Take care.